In part 2 of this series, highlighting the lore of the classes, in Pantheon Rise of the Fallen, the upcoming MMORPG by Visionary Realms, we'll take a look at the Warrior, Rogue, and Cleric classes. Just to recap, in part 1, we reviewed the Monk, Wizard, and Enchanter classes. I'll leave a link in the description if you wanted to start there, as it provides a bit of an overview of the series. In this part, we'll once again see how the stories intertwine. Pantheon will be an MMO where class interdependency is at the forefront. You will need to know the synergy of your class skills and the role that they play in the group. But what if you knew your class's history too? As always, there will be some theory crafting involved in this endeavor, but with that in mind, let's continue with the lore of the classes. We begin with the Warrior class, the iconic fighter standing at the front lines of the skirmish to absorb the blows of the enemy. In Pantheon, the Warrior class is much more than a soldier or a mercenary. The Warrior seems to defy limits of physical strength, ability, and resilience. However, she is not content with fortitude alone, but refines her mind as well, becoming a master strategist amidst the mayhem of the battle. All races, but for the gnomes, have embraced the Warrior class on Terminus, but one stands out in this regard. It's the Ogre clans, where we find the greatest commonality with the Warrior class. When it comes to this race, careful study would reveal a race that relishes the dance of warfare tactics, and in whom resides an unmatched respect for valor and courage, whether friend or foe. From the tale of Krogad, lieutenant of the Black Moon clan, which tells of the ogre's founding on Terminus, he states, "Then I heard Rothak's bellow, like a mountain when it breathes fire. The warriors of the Dark Sun stopped and looked to the skies." Rothak, the last leader of the ogres, is characterized in all but name as a warrior. Noted to be a dark messiah risen from the chaos, Rothak, clan lord of the Black Moon tribe, took his tribe to a mountain ridge far to the south, claiming it called his name. Furthermore, Rothak declared himself the Black Moon King, making an unprecedented claim as lord over all 7 clans. In a ruthless campaign, he validated this title, slaying the 6 rival clan lords with his own hand. Rothak's rise to power through decimation of the other clans speaks to his will to dominate, while his kinship with the mountain to his fortitude. Knowing these pieces of the tale, could Rothak have been anything but a warrior? But what other notable warriors have lived through Terminus's conflicts? The highest profile perhaps may be the Remnant, zealous, pious warriors of exceptional abilities, with an unyielding appetite to exterminate the Revenant. Their enemies were also of the class, as the Revenant were an army of warriors, twisted in his own malevolent form, from members of the plentiful Ginto race he had so long loved and prospered. While it could be said that this use of the term warrior is more a general application than that of a specific class, keep in mind that the warrior archetype has always been symbolic of the clash between strength and force, or good and evil, which these examples certainly represent. On a more individual level, there's Thaylen Greyborn, the child of Fairthale nobility, now a woman grown. It is noted, having proven her worth, Thaylen now commands a troop of Daithir's Hand, defending the White Gate, a pass in the Roan border. She is a fierce and loyal commander, changing course from that of a rogue to a front-of-the-line warrior, though still retaining the knacks of her previous life. While Thaylen may now be a legendary warrior amongst the elves, she was once a rogue, so let's dive into that class. The story of any rogue usually begins in the shadows, and in Pantheon that can be seen in several pieces of the lore. From the class page we're told, in the shifting sands of this fragile era, rogues are sought out for the faceless affairs of nations, yet their allegiance is rarely to a banner or creed, but to themselves. We see this with clarity in the tale of Janus Sova, the signature character we learned of last year. He is a master of deception, known as the Queen's Thief. In his tale, we learn of 2 contracts Sova undertakes, one to oust a lord from his keep, the other to protect the daughter of a noble. As noted, his allegiance is to his own causes first, as further complicating the man is his propensity to come to the aid of either side in a conflict, or to harm both equally. Sova further exemplifies the tendencies of the rogue. As the lore notes, while exceptionally skilled with dagger and blade, rogues avoid combat unless it is on their terms. Sova's tale affirms, rarely does bloodshed occur by his own hand, though his abilities in combat are as heralded as his mystique. From the perspective of which race bears a connection to the rogue class, it is notable that the rogue is the only melee class available to the gnomes of Terminus. With their preference for the mystical arts, it is perhaps the infusion of their ingenuity that allows for this. As said, rogues actually avoid melee combat directly. The lore states they will find an opening of opportunity or rely on their alchemical talents to create one themselves. Locked away in their home of Skyhold, perhaps the gnomes have spent that time crafting the poisons needed to facilitate the use of the rogue's alchemical abilities. Abilities like Unstable Mixture, Sleeping Powder, Pressurized Flask, Flash Bomb, or their signature skill, Smoke and Mirrors. The life of a rogue may just be as much of a mad scientist as it is an assassin. Finally, we return to Thalen Greyborn's story to finish our examination of the rogues of Terminus. In Tales from the Fire Part 1, she hears her father's voice while contemplating her place in the world. She asks, "Father, why are there no good rogues?" To which he replies, "I suppose there are some. Why do you want to be a rogue, child?" Thalen replies, "I want to punish evil for hurting the good." Her early years spent in Fairthale reflect her fascination with the class. We learn she was already practiced in some of the basic arts of a rogue as a youth, and Phaedron was not discouraging of her interests or talents. Rogues are likely not as widely common in elven culture as perhaps wizards and healers are, but Thalen was not a priest. Her garments were made for war and not for worship. Speaking of priests, clerics in Pantheon have a unique relationship to the lore, in that they have traditionally called upon their deity to grant them power to fulfill their role. Yet, we know that but a few of the races on Terminus have that power available to them. The lore tells us it is the frail age of Terminus. After the Deicide War, communion with the Celestials is nearly unheard of. Thus, the cleric can scarcely rely on their Pantheon directly. That isn't to say it's unheard of, however. The dwarves, in particular, still have a strong connection to their deity. We learn, for a lone Celestial to bring forth a new race is not unheard of, even amongst those now on Terminus. Such ancestry exists in some number, but no other creation has remained so united with their creator as the dwarves are to their king. Yet, there are two other races which can become clerics in Pantheon. The humans, who were betrayed and clashed on the open battlefield with their fallen deity Osari, and the Darkmere, who murdered their own deity Cyrenai in abject rage after being transformed into a new incarnation of their race, which allowed them to survive on Terminus. These two races find themselves alone in the spiritual realms. So how do these races become clerics within Pantheon's lore? We find our answer in the class description. It states, instead, they must bind themselves to the ancient tomes of their order, the fading vestiges of light when the Celestials had drawn near. Looking at the skills, we see the Tome of the Initiate skill, which appears to be foundational in the growth of a cleric's prowess. There are several references to legends of the clerical order in their skills as well. Those who were the unfortunate target of a curse often sought out Olamai for relief. In the heat of battle, one might have asked Rekon to shield them from damage with his protective light. The great fortitude of Wraithal was likely known throughout the order, as his healing was equivalent to his health. And when fighting the undead, none could match Echo's efficiency with both harming the enemy while saving his allies. But none stood above Murek, whose ability to illuminate his tome brought many of the order out of the darkness, purging even that imposed by magical means. Who were Olamai, Murek, Rekon, and Wraithal? When did they live? Were they dwarven, human, or Darkmere? We can only await further details for now. Lastly, one could easily speculate that the famed celestial boundary, in which an ethereal seclusion was imposed between the races and those gods which remained, may have been aided in its creation by the clerics of Terminus. Consider the skill Celestial Aegis, and note how it bears a striking resemblance to the celestial boundary, the quintessential piece of the Dragon Accord. More emboldened minds may theorize that when the Accord was struck, clerics, such as Murek, may have played a role. After all, we're told that Causus, the dwarven deity, understood the second half of the celestial boundary, namely, the boundary. Furthermore, the Darkmere's goddess Cyrenai also had a direct connection to the celestial boundary. From the lore, the Keeper notes, I have mentioned the celestial boundary and its effects. There is the account of the mere goddess Cyrenai in saving her people despite the boundary, though at tragic cost. But then again, perhaps not, and perhaps this is rather a means by which the clerics of Terminus have sought to emulate their absent gods. The class page does note, clerics have been mistakenly revered as true celestials. So, for those of you who will be playing a cleric in Pantheon, perhaps you will be the one to ascend to true celestial status. Thank you again, as always, for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments. Did I miss something in the lore that relates to the classes? If you like this kind of thing, make sure to subscribe to the channel, as we're always putting out Pantheon-related content. And until next time, cheers, and thanks for watching.